Hello! So, I came up with a AoE build for Holy Paladin, which is somewhat of a continuation of a build that I was doing in Dragonflight when I leveled another Paladin and then didn't really do much of anything else with them. I don't even know that I got to max level. I think I did. I think I got to level 70. And then I just never did anything else with them. So, I wanted to level a Paladin to run the Undermine raid and farm some of the weapon appearances. So I leveled a Paladin through Burning Crusade dungeons, because those are probably my favorite dungeons to run, and I've ran them enough that I can kind of tell where a particular, like, what's working and what's not with a class. So and then I did some from 70 to 80 I did War Within dungeons, and then came straight to the Undermine. Went through my what is it? Warband. There we go. Went through my bank and got some gear, and then just came straight to the Undermine and did some world quests and whatnot to get my item level up. You really don't need a super high item level to do the Liberation of Undermine raid. So was able to do that. So I've done it twice. I've actually only been level 80 for about a week, but I did it once, and then the next day was reset, and I did it again, and I've done some dungeons and whatnot, just trying to get my vault rewards. So, with that being said, I feel like I have a general setup. I don't really feel like there's anything that I need to play around with that's really going to change much. So, wanted to kind of go over everything while it was still fresh in my mind. So, first of all, there is some theory crafting that I feel like you could do depending on what you wanted to take as far as the talents. So I'm mostly going to be focusing on the talents that I took. A lot of the talents that I didn't take, specifically for the Holy talent, have something to do with damage. So they either interact with a damage ability or after you do damage, something like that. So like this little cluster here all works with some sort of damage ability. And you may notice I did not take Hammer of Wrath. I wanted to make as much of a pure, just straightforward healing spec as possible. Paladin is not one of my traditionally favorite classes to play. I love the idea of Paladins, I just don't care for how any of the specs typically work. I've played all three specs to varying degrees, and I usually don't end up sticking with them for very long. And specifically, Holy Paladin is more of a single target healing spec, so it just typically doesn't have any AoE, and yeah, and they seem to agree with some of the things that I in the past have not cared for, because they've made quite a few changes. So as I said, there are some things that I think you could or couldn't take depending on what type of a build you were going for. There's some on the Holy Talents and there's some on the Paladin talents. So for the Holy Talents, there is Aura Mastery, and Light of the Martyr, and if you take that, there's also Bestow Light. So these are two that I played around with. This was probably where I had the most kind of trial and error trying to see what was doing what. As far as aura mastery, so the auras in general, I don't particularly care for because they're just not all that good, in my opinion. You only have 3, and they either interact with your speed, damage reduction, or basically crowd control. I think the Death Knight versions of those tend to work better because they are more specific to the spec that they're for. So Blood typically has one that works with Blood, and Frost with Frost, and Unholy with Unholy. I think you could, at some point, take one or all through talents in one way or another. I have not played Death Knight in a while, so I don't know if that's still true. But they tend to have more of an effect. They tend to be more focused on your opponent and not trying to buff your party and all that, which I understand is a big part of what Paladin used to be, but the keyword is used to be. So they put Aura Mastery in a while ago, and it's supposed to enhance for a limited time whatever aura you have selected. So as you see, their damage reduction goes up from 3% to 12%, which is just not all that great. Now, I was oddly hopeful because they did add Merciful Auras, which just constantly makes whatever aura you have heal. So your auras restore health up to 3 injured allies within 20 yards for every 2 seconds. Bear that in mind because that'll be important in a second. While Aura Mastery is active, heals all allies within 60 yards, and healing is increased by 20%. So it sounds really good. And if this was just like, if you were using this and a aura, kind of like a healing stream totem, just something to have a little bit of constant healing going to people, that would be perfectly fine. But they seem to be trying to make this more of a thing. And it's kind of a poor healing stream totem. I mean, it just doesn't, when I've checked recount, none of this is high up on my healing. And when you bring in, I originally did not have Aura Mastery because I've tried it before and I just don't like it. For 3 seconds, it gives you, it only lasts for 8 seconds. Merciful Auras only works every 2 seconds. So it actually only ticks every four times in the 8 seconds, every 2 seconds, which is not great in my opinion. And then when I was rereading this, as I was kind of messing around with things, heals all allies within 60 yards, and healing is increased by 20%. Which means to me you have to activate it and then use something else, which kind of overlaps with other abilities that you have that do similar things. Like, there's just no way of really stacking it with very much. I'm going to take it, I'm going to use it, because I don't really think there's not a better solution for what I'm doing. I think I had, what did I have? I think I had, yeah, Judgment empowers your next Holy Word Glory to automatically activate Light of Dawn with 25% effectiveness. I think that was it. This effect can only occur every 20 seconds. Yeah, I think that was it. I think I had this for a while, and I was kind of, as I was playing around, I was kind of looking at what be the least detrimental to swap out, and that was it. So, yeah. So as far as Light of the Martyr, So you don't have the actual ability anymore. That's probably the one major difference to Holy as far as like the abilities go. Everything else has pretty much stayed constantly the same. They haven't really... Holy Paladin's not a spec they take away and add things to very often. So, Light of the Martyr, while above 70% health, Holy Shock's healing is increased by 35%, but creates a heal absorb on you for 30% of the amount healed that prevents Beacon of Light from healing you until it has dissipated. And then if you take Bestow Light, it just enhances Light of the Martyr. So instead of... normally this would be 80% health, but with Bestow Light, it is 70% health. So your health can drop down to 70% before you lose the increased healing to Holy Shock. By an additional 5% for 5 seconds. Active, stacking up 3 times, while above 70% health. The light urgently heals you for almost 13,000 every 1 second. So that was also why I took this, because I thought it was going to be pretty good. So I played around with this for a while. It seemed like there was a bit of a drop-off in my healing, and then when I started looking into the absorb thing, then I realized I had taken Overflowing Light, which takes 30% of Holy Shock's overhealing and creates a basically like a power word shield on the target, which is a really weird thing to add to Holy. I like it. It makes single target healing better, but I can't tell if Light of the Martyr text says it only affects you, but it also says that until the shield is gone, the amount healed that prevents Beacon of Light from healing you until it has dissipated. And this is also 30%. So I can't tell if this is affecting all of Holy Shock's overhealing, or if it is truly just on me. I've tried selecting something else than Overflowing Light and kind of playing around with it. I cannot tell. Unfortunately, Recount just counts Holy Shock. It does not actually specifically mention like Light of the Martyr or Overflowing Light necessarily, so I can't tell for sure. So that's something to consider. I would say the Light of the Martyr for the most part is pretty good. I would say you almost had to take Bestow Light. You don't have to, but it seems like between the extra 10% in health that your health can go down to, your health really shouldn't be dropping below 80%, but there are certain circumstances. If you were doing like Mythic Plus or raids, I see that kind of being an issue. It just gives you a little bit more breathing room. And then the healing, if you do drop below 70% health, is I think really good. I have started to prioritize more abilities that will heal me as a healer. I always kind of thought they were a bit silly to have because you're a healer, you can heal yourself, but doing Mythic Plus for a few different seasons now, I've kind of come to appreciate abilities like this more. And then as far as the Paladin talents go, the only two that you really kind of need to decide if you want to take, and I think this affects, has more to do with your actual playstyle, is which blessing you want to take. If you want Blessing of Protection and or Blessing of Sacrifice. So, I had Blessing of Protection because it's just kind of a default emergency ability for Paladins. It's been around forever. I don't particularly care for the blessings. I'm probably a bad paladin in that way. I've just never really used them. I've never really worked them into my rotation. They're not a utility that I've really found all that useful. I was able to avoid taking Blessing of Freedom because they built it into your Divine Steed, so I was perfectly fine with that. I had Blessing of Freedom, and then I did a raid where the tank was a paladin and they had used theirs on themselves, and you cannot use another one if one's already been used on a target, which makes sense, but is not something that I imagine comes up terribly often. So it wasn't something that was something I was keeping in mind. So I thought, well, you know, with the forbearance and all of that, which you can reduce, there is a talent that will reduce that by 10 seconds. I thought, well, you know, Blessing of Sacrifice might be better because there were points in different fights where I wasn't doing anything. Like I was at full health. There just wasn't much to do. So I thought, well, Blessing of Sacrifice might help. I might be able to throw that on a target and take some of their damage and just constantly keep healing. Played around with some of the talents. Had taken, what was it? There we go. Worthy Sacrifice, which automatically casts Blessing of Sacrifice, and let's see. You are onto an ally within 40 yards when they are below 30% health. Yeah, I think that was it, right? Automatically cost Blessing onto an ally within 40 yards when they are below 30% health, and there was one of these. Oh yeah, this effect, bonus damage cannot exceed 30% of your maximum health. Yeah, so that was kind of problematic. I almost killed myself once, so immediately changed all this. So I've played with Blessing of Sacrifice and the two options. You have here, and then below those, Righteous Protection would be good if you were doing like PvP or Mythic Plus, I imagine. But it's a very specific, I feel like, to your playstyle. So I just took Blessing of Protection. There's always going to be more players that you can use this on than just another paladin if you're in a group with another paladin, so which is usually very rare. If you do like dungeons or anything like that. So if you just want a default to take, I took that, and then improved Blessing of Protection, which reduces the cooldown of Blessing of Protection by 60 seconds. So, as far as the actual abilities go, it's kind of hard to mention a rotation because you don't really play Holy like a regular healer, which will become clear momentarily. So, as I said, you may notice I don't have Beacon of Light because I took Beacon of Virtue, which basically makes Beacon of Light an AoE effect temporarily on a 15-second cooldown, which is, I think, ridiculously good. So what I started doing in Dragonflight was using Beacon of Virtue with Divine Toll, which casts Holy Shock on up to 5 targets. So you're not only direct healing, but then Beacon of Virtue is casting Beacon of Light, which is also healing, and then your Beacon of Light is healing the target based on your other healing, and everybody has Beacon of Light, so everybody's getting healed from everybody else. So it works really well as kind of an AoE effect. It almost works as kind of like an overtime effect, in a matter of speaking. It doesn't seem to work all that well in raids. I was very disappointed, and I really think it has to do with overflowing light. I'm just not 100% sure, so bear that in mind. It does do something. Recount is telling me it does something. It is on an extremely short cooldown. So by the time you need to use it again, both Divine Toll and Beacon of Virtue should be off cooldown. I have also started using Hammer of Wrath, which I took as to have as a cooldown ability. And I will use it with Beacon of Virtue too, which does seem to work better. Unfortunately, Hammer of Wrath has a 2-minute cooldown. So it's not always up when I want to use it. It's close, but it's not always up when I want to use it. As far as the rest of the abilities, so if we look at Holy Shock, most of the talents I took just are passives that increase what Holy Shock does. So you get it by default. That is your main ability for Holy. And then Holy Shock now has 2 charges, and it refunds 50% of its mana cost. Its mana cost when cast on an enemy. Holy Shock, Holy Light, and Flashio critical healing increased by 20%. Consuming infusion of light reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock by 1 second. So that is a passive. There we go. So your critical Holy Shocks empower your next spell cast. Flash of Light healing increased 30%. Holy Light healing increased 30%. Judgment, greater judgment prevents an additional 100% damage dealt by the target. 30% of Holy Shocks over healing is converted into an absorption shield. The shield amount cannot exceed 10% of the maximum health, so we already went over that. Holy Shock and Judgment have an 8% increased critical strike chance. And then, of course, Avenging Wrath. Become an avatar of Retribution. Avatar is a bit misleading because you don't actually change into anything, as you have in the past with some Paladin abilities. Reducing Holy Shock's cooldown by 50%, increasing your damage, healing, and critical strike chance by 15% for 25 seconds. So bear in mind you are a single target healer for the most part, so critical strike chance does matter. Now this is another point where you kind of have a choice in what you choose. So I took Sanctified Wrath. Avenging Wrath now reduces Holy Shock's cooldown by 50%, and its duration is increased by 25%. Now I had taken Awakening because it works. It's supposed to stack up, and then when it reaches its appropriate number of stacks, it's supposed to activate Avenging Wrath for 12 seconds. So in my mind, it was working kind of like with Shaman. You have abilities that will activate Ascendance for a few seconds, or as Demon Hunter, you have abilities that will activate your demon form, basically Metamorphosis, for so many seconds. And that's kind of fun. It kind of breaks up your mundane rotation of just kind of running through the same things. The thing is, you have to, when in combat, your holy power spenders generate 1 stack of Awakening. You need 15 stacks in order to... Next Judgment deals 40% increase damage, your critical strike chance, and activates Avenging Wrath for 12 seconds. The thing is, you never get to 15 stacks. I used this for the longest time. Like leveling into, I think I used it maybe on my first raid run through the Undermine raid. I think I only got this to work once, maybe twice. You never get, you just never get to 15 stacks for some reason. It also, I couldn't tell if it doesn't mention that it resets if you fall out of combat, but that was what I was finding. Sometimes it would continue, um, the stacks have a bit of a counter on them. They are not indefinite, so they will expire unless you get another stack, and then that kind of resets the timer. I could not tell if kind of what was causing it to stay when I fell out of combat, and then sometimes I would fall out of combat when I was leveling and doing BC dungeons. Sometimes I would come out of combat and it would just disappear. Other times it would stay through a trash pull and into a boss fight, but I never got to 15 stacks. So, Sanctified Wrath is perfectly fine. I think that works well for what you need. Again, just everything kind of buffs Holy Shock, what Holy Shock does, which is perfectly fine. It's a really good ability. It's a single target instant version of Penance, basically. So it will heal or do damage, so perfectly fine. And then Holy Shock has a 12% chance to refund a charge when cast, and its healing is increased by 10%. So this is your main ability that you will be using. So taking things that enhance it are typically pretty good. Flash heal, you saw some of, or Flash of Light, I should say. I don't use Holy Light. I don't generally ever use the slower, larger heal. I typically just stay with the faster, cheaper, or more expensive heal. So yeah, casting Flash of Light generates 1 holy power. I would say this is almost kind of a default that you should take, because you do need 3 for a lot of the things that you will need holy power for, which is your resource as a paladin, and you can have, I don't know if you can see it right there, but you can have 5. So yeah, let's see here. After casting Barrier Faith or Holy Prism, the healing of your next Holy Light or Flash of Light is increased by 20%. Its cast time is reduced 30%, and its mana cost is reduced by 50%. So again, I would say that is almost a have-to kind of thing. Flash of Light, critical healing is increased 20%. You won't use it a whole lot, I find, but when you do need to use it, having the lower mana cost and the faster cast time and the critical strike chance and all that does help. So Holy Shock and Flash of Light, the talents basically just buff them. They don't really change what they do. Now for Word of Glory, I took, where is it exactly? I had it and I lost it. It actually changes if you, oh, there we go. Hello. So I went with the Herald of the Sun for the hero talents, I guess is what these are, right? Yeah. Lightsmith seemed to, as I said, kind of was more of a combination of you needed to do damage. It involved more damage, and I didn't want to do all that. So Herald of the Sun seemed a bit more straightforward, and you get Eternal Flame, which replaces your Word of Glory. Basically, it just adds an overtime heal to it. That's it. And increases healing when it's cast on yourself. So you want to basically disregard the healing over time, because this is your largest direct heal, your largest overall heal that you have. and you just want to use it however many times you're able to if you need to use it. Normally I only have to use it once on an ally. There are times you may need to use it twice, and then you just have the additional healing over 16 seconds. So it's kind of nice. And that's why you want to make sure that you take Tower of Radiance, so you can get that that third holy power with Flash of Light. So, because Holy Shock only has 2 charges, and while it does only have an 8-second cooldown, it is still a cooldown, and nothing else really generates holy power, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think Divine Toll does, even though it casts Holy Shock. So, Eternal Flame is your single target heal, and then Light of Dawn is your AoE heal. I don't think, I'll check if I took anything. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I took anything for that. Let me try Light of Dawn. There were a few things, yeah, so you have to take it as a talent. Each holy power spent on Word of Glory increases the healing of your Light of Dawn by 5%, up to a maximum of 45%. Okay, so I stand corrected. I did take that. Increases the range of Light of Dawn. Yes, that is very important as well, because it does have a notoriously short range that it heals, which is unfortunate. This has always been like the only, the main, if not the only, AoE heal you've had as a Holy Paladin, and it was never very good, because you have to generate a resource for it, and it usually had a very short range that it would heal. Word of Glory and Light of Dawn gain up to 30% additional chance to critical strike based on the target's current health. Lower health targets are more likely to be critically struck. So, there you go. Then there are some hero talents, so critical strike chance is increased. Critical strike chance causes the target to be healed for an additional... have a chance to gain an additional 30% effectiveness. So, you get the general idea, just kind of buffs it. Like I said, I think they kind of knew, like, the auras and different things, you know, Light of Dawn were kind of in need of buffing or something different. And then they made, in one of the kind of changes in direction they've made, you used to have 2 different abilities. You had Holy Prism, and then you had a Hammer that was an on kind of a target location ability. They did away with the Hammer, which they've been moving. There were like 3 different abilities that they added in Warlords that they've been shifting around the different specs and whatnot. They were all on one row back when we had the rows of talents, the previous talents, I guess I should say. But now they've made Holy Prism kind of more of a thing, as you saw there from the, there was a talent here. Yeah, so you can pick Holy Prism or Barrier of Faith. I think Holy Prism works a bit better, because it can do damage or healing. And all 3 abilities did the exact same thing. They just did it in a different way. I guess I should have just went down one more. So after casting Holy Prism, the healing of your next Holy Light or Flash heal is increased 20%. Cast damage. Yeah, so there you go. Causes your next 2 Holy Power spender abilities to apply downlight on your target, dealing damage or healing. If someone damage or healing radiates to nearby allies. Yeah. Let's see here. And then, of course, after casting Holy Prism or Barrier of Faith, you gain Divine Purpose. So your next ability is free and deals 15% increased damage and healing. So they've kind of tried to work it in there and make it more of a thing, which is fine. This is kind of what I'll open with because I can target the... It's kind of confusing. If you target an enemy, it will heal allies. If you target a ally, it will do damage to enemies. So I will use it on a boss as kind of an opener to heal that initial damage. And then just kind of go to... Just kind of run through Holy Shock, Flash of Light when need be, and then just kind of keep Eternal Flame out when need be. It just kind of depends. There's not really a rotation because it kind of depends on what you're doing. Towards the middle end of most of the boss fights, that's when I'll start using like Beacon of Virtue and Divine Toll, and then I'm just using the single target abilities more as kind of a filler until the AoE abilities are off cooldown. I've tried using Aura Mastery, and the cooldown for the duration and everything just is not good. I just don't care for it. The one damage ability that I am using, which does kind of help with healing, is Judgment. And there were quite a few things that I did take with Judgment. So this is the one thing that I did take some talents for as far as damage. Because I am used to, since I've been playing Evoker, I am used to having Fire Breath and just being able to do a little bit of damage. So I've been trying to at least prioritize one damage ability, and Judgment kept coming up. So the two most important abilities, I would say, are for Judgment and kind of by proxy Consecration. So you have Righteous Judgment, which gives it a 50% chance to cast Consecration at the target's location. The limit of your Consecration does not apply to this effect, which is important. The 50% chance seems to be tied somewhat to your critical strike chance. I did the character kind of character upgrade that you can do with this, where you get different bags and, you know, a whole new set of gear and all that. It did not prioritize critical strike for some reason. It prioritized mostly like mastery and versatility. So as I started replacing it and obviously got more gear with critical strike, this seemed to activate more often. Otherwise, the way my gear was when I first took this, I would definitely say it's more of like a 20% chance or like a 33% chance. Definitely did not feel like it was a 50-50 chance. The other thing I took was Golden Path, which I feel like they could have come up with a better name for. Consecration heals you and 5 allies within it for almost 2,600 every 0.9 seconds. So, Righteous Judgment does two things. It allows Consecration to possibly heal and be kind of a range heal if it actually procs. And because it doesn't have a limit, and since your mastery is based on your healing is based on your proximity to your target, if you are in close range, as you usually are in a raid, I can run in and drop a Consecration, and then I typically keep Judgment on cooldown, so that'll be the second thing I'll use. I'll use Holy Prism first, which has a 30-second cooldown, which I feel like is a bit long. I feel like 25 seconds might be better. And then I will use Judgment, which has a almost 9.5 seconds. But by the time you need to use it again, it'll always be off cooldown. So I would say it's almost a kind of 2-for-1 ratio depending on the fight. I'll get about 2 uses of Judgment, which about makes sense because it has almost a 10-second cooldown. And then I'll use Holy Prism again. So I can't use them together as I would like. But I can use it in combination with Consecration itself. So I don't do that very often, but if I am in close proximity to the group, I will drop a Consecration to just help out with damage, but also healing, and then use Judgment again, and I have had them overlap. So that is very nice. And that is most of everything. You have your Divine Shield, of course. I don't typically use that often. I do use Divine Protection quite a bit, just to give me a little bit of damage reduction when I'm not entirely sure what's going on. I didn't look up the fights or anything for LFR. I just kind of jumped in. So it's pretty routine. There's pretty much enough people that know what they're doing, and you can kind of overgear for LFR because it's supposed to be somewhat learning. And I think a lot of people are just running it for gear and transmog like I am and whatnot. So it hasn't been too difficult, but there are times where I will use it if I'm not sure what exactly is happening next, or if I have to move or something like that. And yeah, I mean, you have a little bit of damage ability, so Crusader Strike, and because you have a shield, you can use Shield of Righteousness, so I have been able to do damage to some degree. Don't use Lay on Hands, but I have it. I feel like between Blessing of Protection and Lay on Hands, you have 2 kind of emergency abilities if need be. So yeah, so there you go. There was my build, as I said, my AoE build for Holy Paladin. Hope that was helpful for you. Hope you enjoyed that. And thank you for watching.